So we're going to start this evening's class lying down. Now we've got our props ready. I've got my bolster to the side of my mat. I've got my strap. I'm just going to unravel that as well. So don't have to worry about that. Sorry for that clanging around. And then we're going to come into banana pose, which is a pose that we've probably done before. We're going to make ourselves look like a banana from the sky. So I'm going to roll down gently. You could always roll down onto the side first if that's easier for you. Just looking after the neck. Now extend the hands back. Allow yourself to very gently interlace your fingers, or in this case, I would take hold of my left wrist and move over towards the right. So just drawing the shoulders over gently into a little bit of a curve, a side bend if you like. And I want to try and get my hands on the ground behind. So although one of the options is to hold the wrist, I find sometimes interlacing the fingers a little easier. You want to keep both shoulder blades down on the ground and the back of your pelvis flat to the floor as well. You use the toes to just walk the feet out and then slide the heels down the line of the mat. Take a couple of breaths just to let the spine settle in. Relax around the ribs and through the top of your belly, lower back. And then when you feel completely comfortable, we can start to take the legs slowly, one leg at a time, also out to the right. And you'll find that your right leg will move quite happily. And then when you try to move your left, you'll realize that that is quite a strong stretch down the outside of your body. You'll feel it in your hips and your lower back as well. I have got the head turned slightly to the right, closing the eyes and softening the jaw. Now you could, if you wish to, cross your left leg over your right at the ankles, if that feels good in your lower back. For some, that will just pull a little bit too much on the sciatic nerve, and if it feels like that is compromised, it's making it a little tricky to breathe, and there's a lot of heat generated in your lower back down the side of your body, any of those things are really indications that you need to consider moving out a little bit and maybe bringing the feet back flat to the ground. Everybody's body is different. Some of these curves are going to look quite extreme. Some of them are going to be negligible. As long as we've got the shoulders on the ground and the back of the pelvis, you might need to rock around a little bit. It takes a while sometimes to notice if the left side of the pelvis is lifted off the ground. Now to come out of that slowly, I'm going to unpeel the legs in my case, and then try to bring them back to where I think the center line is. It's a bit of a guess. And then wriggle the shoulders back to the center line as well. Now, if your shoulders feel like they've kind of gone to sleep a little bit, it's too much lactic acid buildup, you might want to bring your hands back down by the side of your bodies and give yourself a little shake out. But when you're ready, you're going to take the hands back over the head. Either take hold of the wrist or interlace the fingers, and then just wriggle the shoulders gently out to the left side this time. Nice straight arms. Again, might not need quite so much time for the body to adjust since the arms have been over and the ribs are open. So you can start to move your legs gently one at a time over towards the left. And again, if you wish to, you can cross over. You could cross on one side and then not the other, or none at all, or both. Those are your options. Now, as ever in these poses in the yin practice, scanning around the body to see how it feels, and just checking in with the breath, keep it relaxed and long and smooth. Do find your mind kind of wandering off. Allow yourself to come back to how your body feels. Just accept that the mind will want to wander, depending perhaps on the circumstances of your day. But it is perfectly natural for that to happen. Breathe in and start to move the legs and the shoulders back to the center line. Gradually, and then let the hands come back down by the side of the body. And they will take a few seconds for the blood to feel like it's starting to return back down through your arms. So just allow yourself to sink into the mat. And now it feels like I've kind of reconnected back to a normal body. I'll bring the feet together on the center line, extend it out in front of me. And I'll slowly draw my left leg in towards me. Now I've got the bolster already on my left side. So if your bolster's on the other side, just do it the other way around. Use your right leg, no problem. And take the strap, draw the knee in, and allow myself to place the strap around the sole of my foot, preferably going across the big joint of the big toe and the little toe. Now, I'm going to be letting the leg go out. So I want to take a bind of the strap around the fist. So allow the strap to come together close towards the hand, towards the foot. So the arm is already straight. And then as you're ready to lay back down, allow yourself to just adjust, let that strap slide through so that you can get your leg to be relatively straight and above your hip. And you can take your right hand out to the side for a little bit of extra balance through the body. And I'm going to slowly start to let the left leg hang out to the side. So I'm going to bring it down carefully. I'm trying to keep the strap taut so that my shoulder is doing some of the work in terms of guiding the leg down. I've got the bolster pulled in close to the side of the body. The further away, obviously, the lower the leg will come. And then we're just going to let that hang there. So I've got the benefit of the strap. I've got the benefit of the bolster. And I'm going to try and let the hips sink down to the floor. And let the groins relax. Just about there. Going to take a breath in and start to use the strength of the arm to lift the leg back up. On an exhale. Just bring me up very slowly, and then I can let the leg drop down to the floor after I've taken the strap off. So lengthen the leg out, and then hopefully without too much moving around, I can draw the bolster over my body and out towards the opposite side. And place that down. And I'm going to do exactly the same again. I'm going to take the opposite leg in. I'll allow myself to lift up a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. Extend the leg out. Get the bind of the strap around the fist, which is up and over. Using the fingers and the thumbs then to control where the leg lies. Take the last breath as the hand goes out to the side, and then begin to let the leg drift out slowly. The leg being eventually supported mostly by the bolster and a little bit by the arm that comes out to the side. So I can relax the shoulders, relax the hips, relax the legs. And again, you can move the bolster around in and out to give you the level of stretch that you want. This doesn't really need us to stretch to the absolute limit of our range of movement. It's about feeling the strain being taken up in the groin through ligaments and tendons, and giving the hip a little bit of chance to open up out to the side. And then we'll begin to lift the leg back up. And ease that foot down to the floor. Bring both feet in closer to the body. Untangle the strap. Put that out to the side for the moment. I'm going to roll over to my right side. Just use my hands to press into the floor and lift back up. So coming up nice and smoothly. Going to move into child's pose. So I'll just put the bolster out to the back for the moment, so that's out of the way. We'll be using it again in a moment. Child's pose, I'm going to have the feet, the knees quite narrow, about hip distance apart. So I'm not taking the wide version. I'm going to sit down onto the heels and then bring the hands underneath the head, making some little potato heads with my hands, one on top of the other. Now, if you're able to be in this position and keep your bottom and the heels touching and your head touches the floor, that's great. But my back is a little bit stiff this evening. I've been doing a lot of walking this afternoon, so it's tightened up a bit. I'm just taking a little time, starting with 2 fists underneath the forehead. I've been here for a little bit. Diaphragm's got used to the idea of where I am. Breathing is smoothing out a little bit. And allow myself to release, down a little bit further. Just changing the hand position, elbows are out to the side, shoulders nice and relaxed. Down a little lower again. And it's time to lift up. I'm going to come into bridge pose and I'm going to use the bolster for support. So, crosswise. You could use blocks and bricks if you wished. I'm going to start with the bolster a little bit sort of further down towards the feet. So there's room for me to roll the bolster underneath while still having my head on the mat behind me. Definitely don't want anything underneath the back of your head. You can use the heels to walk the bolster in and then take a little bit of elbow pressing down with the fingers pointing up towards the sky. Let the hips lift up and then you can move your hands down, hopefully find the bolster with your fingers. Just wheel it in underneath the pelvis rather than pressing into your spine and then allow yourself to sink down. And we'll let the hands just come out by the side of the body. Now, if you wanted to, you could take your hands up towards the sky and drop them to the floor behind, but you can also do exactly the same with the hands, more sort of down towards the hips. I've started to take the feet out as wide as the mat and let the knees knock in a little bit. So turning the toes in kind of helps emphasize that inward movement. And I'm beginning to already sense gravity moving through my spine as I try to relax the muscles across the belly and the back and through my ribs and across my pelvis. So there is a gentle feeling that my spine is sinking into the ground. And it does take a little bit of trust in your own body that it will only move as far as it's safe for you to do so. Okay, so to take some longer breaths. Make sure that your feet come in a little bit more hip distance with the heels underneath the knees. Draw the tummy muscles down and hold them down as you exhale, although continue to breathe. Going to press down through the shins evenly through both feet and see if you can move the hips just that amount enough. You're going to slide the bolster out from underneath and off to the side and take a few breaths to allow your spine to roll back down to the floor. It will feel like the floor is suspiciously further away than you remember it being. But try not to let yourself collapse at that last moment. Continue to just hold the tailbone up until the spine has nestled down nicely into the ground. Hopefully, like me, you've arrived, and then you can roll again onto your right side. Just careful of your bolsters, etc. And allow yourself to use your hands to press into the floor. And again, try to move as smoothly from the ground as you can. We'll come into butterfly pose, which requires no props at all, just a mat. So we're going to sit up, just a little lift there to kind of sort out the sitting bones so the tissues move around a little bit. I've got the sole of the feet together, so as far forward as they can be where I can still get my toes to touch easily. And then just sort of wriggle out a little bit so those knees get as low as they can. The butterfly pose, I'm going to allow myself to round gently. So good to hands towards the feet. And then gradually start to round the spine. And I will slowly let the head drop down to the floor as well. But I'm not intensely looking for a forward fold. I'm trying to cultivate around the spine than perhaps I would in a seated forward fold in a hatha class. Now I can feel the heat transmitting to the back surface of the spinal column. The discs are opening out, and the fascia is stretching. A little bit of heat generated lower down. Tricky to breathe. Diaphragm is compromised a little bit, so breath is more to the side. Elbow placement, really up to you. I tend to bring my elbows inside. I find that quite comfortable. I do appreciate that some people like their elbows outside of their legs, and that's fine if that feels good to you. Now again, we'll start to lift slowly back out of that, using the hands. And just put the hands underneath the legs, bring them back in. Stretch the legs out a little bit, just to kind of bring a little bit of awareness back into them. And we're going to move on to all fours. And I'm going to place the bolster now towards the front end of the mat. So this could be where you could use a series of bricks and blocks if you need them, and possibly you won't. So all fours. This first pose, a low flying dragon. I don't really need the bolster. And to start in a nice tabletop position, bring the knees underneath the hips, and then slide the right foot forwards So the ankle and the knee are aligned to each other. I'll slowly walk the left leg back using the toes to get that to a comfortable position. And then I'm going to come up onto the fist. So I'm making some knuckles there. Thumbs are pointing forwards. And just bring the hands underneath the shoulders. And then on the exhale, I'm going to let the right knee travel forwards a little bit. So now I'm actually over the ankle towards the toes. I want to avoid taking the knee past the line of the toes, but anywhere between the ankle and the tip of your toes will be fine. And you can play around with your hand position as you move forward so that you can get a good feeling of the hands being underneath the shoulders with support. Now trying to let the hip drop down towards the ground. Now I'm going to start to move out of that. To make that a little bit easier, I'm actually going to bring the right hand onto the inside of the foot. Press the hands into the floor so I can start to move back a little bit, untangle the legs. You might want to stretch both legs out a little bit. The left leg will have felt like it's done a lot of work. The right leg might feel like it's done a bit as well. Really depends on how much weight you were taking into the hands and the fists. Again, from that tabletop position, we'll bring the left foot through. Just again, making sure the shin is vertical to start with. Lifting the back knee, just easing the foot away comfortable distance. Onto the fists. And then let yourself sink forward just that little bit. So the thigh is kind of jammed between the side of my body and my arm. And I'm trying to keep the shin pretty much vertical, even though it's leaning forwards. The sort of side-to-side aspect of it is more upright and aligned towards the ground and the ceiling. So avoiding the knee hanging out to the side too much at this point. And we'll start to let ourselves lift out of that. So again, same trick as before. We'll bring both hands in, walk them back, and then let myself untangle my legs. Give them a little shake out, whatever you need to do, side to side, taking the knees out, just sort of give them a little bit of a TLC, whatever's good. Now we're going to come into the low-lying lizard version, which is where I will need the bolster to come in a little bit closer. So it needs to be within hand's distance of you, towards the front of the mat. I'm going to take the right foot this time to the outside of the mat, so well outside of my hands, and to walk the bolster back in underneath me. Allow the elbows to come down. Now you could actually come all the way down to the floor if that's okay in your body, but for most of us, this would be a more comfortable version. You want to get to the point where your elbows are underneath your shoulders, so you can sink the chest down towards the floor and the hips. And in this occasion, we'll let the knee rock out to the side. Hip can hang as well. Now, the benefit of having the bolster, apart from being a little higher, is also it's way more comfortable on your elbows. So if you've got bony elbows and you're on the floor, that can be a bit of a challenge. And try and let the chest sink and the hips. I'm just using the thumbs to support the neck a little bit. Some people like to actually do this looking forwards a fraction, but I tend to like to drop my neck and head a little bit in this, and then just rest my forehead against my thumbs. The hands are slightly interlaced to make that easy. Working into that hip joint a little deeper than we did when we took the legs out to the side with the strap. And simultaneously working on the hip flexors on the long leg. Trying to let the chest sink to the ground, allow the shoulders to have a little bit of movement in there as well. As you're getting a little lower to the ground. And believe it or not, it's time to lift back up. We'll just ease our way out. Get the leg back, which might need a hand, literally, to stretch that out. Now, I'd like to just move the bolster out of the way again to set up for the second side. And I take a moment really to sit in this very relaxed all fours position. So letting the chest and the belly sink to the ground. And then it's okay to start picking up. So I'm going to press into the floor a little bit, push away from the ground. Take the breath in. On the exhale, left foot goes out to the side. Retrieve the bolster. Allow the elbows to come down into position. Again, hands are slightly interlaced. I'm going to walk the back foot away a comfortable distance to sink the hip to what I would consider my starting position. And then we can relax in. remember, we're trying to let the chest sink to the ground as well. Knee allowed to roll out to the side. So in this case, I'm rolling onto the side edge of the foot as well. And it's time to lift back up. I can move the bolster now out towards the front of the mat. Don't need that anymore. Bring the legs back. Again, just take a moment on all fours. Stretch the legs out by all means if you need to, but allow yourself to kind of just hang into a very, very loose version of tabletop all fours. So the shoulders kind of reach up around your ears, the belly sinks, spine hollows out a little bit. And then we're going to change the tempo a little bit. So we're going to come into down dog and bring the hands towards the front of the mat. Now, just before we start, I will say that the block I have is towards the back of the mat, to stand within reach. I'll tuck the toes underneath and lift into down dog. So I press away from the floor a little bit and ease my way in. I allow myself to stretch the legs out a little bit. So a nice slow walk through pedaling the legs. And that stretch underneath the heel of the foot and around the back of the calf, through the Achilles area, back of the ankle. Now I'll take a little breath from here and start to walk the hands gently in towards the toes and take my time coming into a forward bend. Now at the back of the mat, I can pick up my block and just have that on the sort of edge, but the lower edge, so landscape, I guess would probably be the best way of putting that. Allow both hands to come onto there, and then I can just press my hands into the block a little bit, and whilst I'm in a sort of a semi-forward bend, begin to let the legs open out a little bit to become straight towards that. Trying to keep the weight even between both feet, and I'm actually drawing the tummy muscles in as well. Pressing the floor away with the feet and just letting the torso kind of hang out of the hips and softening the elbows enough. I'm still taking some weight out of my spine and allowing my legs to actually open up to be straight. They're literally just dangling around. And then let's soften the knees, let the ribs rest against the thighs. Now move the block out to the side about halfway up the mat and walk the fingers towards the front end of the mat. So I'm coming towards down dog again, but I'm going to bring the knees down to the floor immediately and allow myself to sink down onto my elbows and then walk the feet back one leg at a time. So dropping the hips down to the floor, coming right down to the ground. Elbows out wide. I'm going to bring the back of the hands underneath my chin and then just wriggle out through the hips. Relaxing down into the ground. So deliberately turning the heels out and the toes in with the feet. Can be here for a minute or so. The front hip flexors at the very top of my thighs are feeling like they've done a lot of work. So that sort of area of the groin and the hip joints. Just giving them time to kind of reset, spring back. Take a little breath from there and begin to lift my way back up. The easiest way to do that is to roll to whichever side you like. So you can bring the hands underneath yourself a little bit. Bring your knees towards you and then press into the floor so you lift away from the ground very gently. We're going to swing the feet towards the front of the mat and I'm going to use the block again, but this time underneath the derriere. Lifting up. And we're going to take a seated twist. So I'm going to take the left foot underneath the right leg. So the knees pointing forwards and the foot is now out towards the right side of the mat. Now bring the right leg in and cross that over. Try and have the foot flat to the floor, knee high. And just have a little wriggle to allow those two sitting bones to settle right down into the floor. Starting to tilt the pelvis forwards as I also have that wriggle so that the spine naturally lifts a little bit. I take the left hand through and counterlever the arm and leg together. Now this right hand, I'm going to take it out more to the edge of the mat rather than behind. I want to try and keep the front of the chest and the shoulder nice and relaxed. So being very conscious that I've got a similar amount of weight going through each sitting bone, but it's contacting the block itself, and trying to relax the bottom leg. So although I am using the left arm and right leg to counterlever against each other and try to do that with a very considered view of proportional amount of effort. So there's no point in me trying to push further to gain a small amount of movement. I'd rather wait and let the body kind of open up naturally. And I'm going to release from there. And take it around to the opposite side. So right leg comes under. And left leg goes across. You can use the hands to ease that in, obviously. Foot flat to the floor, knee high, and two sitting bones on the ground. Tilt the pelvis forward to get that extra height. I know when I first started doing yoga, trying to get this front foot flat to the ground was kind of impossible. My hips weren't ready to be open enough to even move into that. So don't get discouraged if you can't get your foot on the ground. It will happen slowly and eventually. I'll take the right arm through. And remember, the left hand goes out towards the edge of the mat. And we try and keep the eyes level. The head is upright. And we breathe. Try and relax the bottom leg. Now I'm going to release from there as well. We're going to take a version of deer pose. So entangling the legs. I'm just going to move towards a position where you can see what I'm doing more easily. So front arm. From all fours position, I'm going to just allow both feet to move over to my right side. So just pivoting on the knees and swinging them out. And as I do that, I'm going to take the block and then place that behind me. So as I sit down, hopefully my bum lands. I'm going to take the right leg out to the side. So if you think of your torso pointing towards the front of the mat, the knee is now 90 degrees out here. And then it'll allow the shin to move into a little bit of a space out towards the side as well. If you can, see if you can use your toes here to wiggle this foot a little bit further forwards. Now, if it doesn't want to go, it doesn't want to go, that's fine. But whatever you do, don't grab hold of your leg and try and pull it. Don't want to do that. Now, allow yourself to turn your body. So if you come from the front, you're going to turn it to more where this thigh is moving out to the side. And then allow your hands to come either side of the leg. You're going to ease your way down over that thigh onto your elbows, and then start to walk your hands back towards the front of the mat. And then just relax. I'm trying to get the head in line pretty much with the body. So depending on how low you go, it's going to be closer to the ground or not. And I'm trying to keep the chest square to the ground. So not rolling too much out to the side. Trying to let both legs relax, which is a challenge this evening. The hips are feeling a bit sticky. Let's get a few more breaths here, keeping the belly drawn in lightly. And then to come out of that, I'm going to press down through the hands and lift my body up. If you find that that's too much in the hips, just walk your hands around to the side again like we came in, and allow yourself to lift out that way. Untangle the legs. Ooh. Come back up onto all fours. I'll take the block out again. Allow myself to lift up onto those familiar all four position, and then take the feet out towards my left. Going to bring the block behind. Take a guesstimate of where I can land, and then start to move the left leg out 90 degrees to the body, and the shin follows effectively the line of the mat. I'm going to use the toes again to wiggle this front foot forward as far as I can, and then align the body over that front thigh as I take the hands down. Going to come towards the elbows as close as you can. You can come lower, obviously, if you're able to. And then walk your torso around so that you are following the line of the mat straight forwards. Again, try and relax those hips. Pretty sticky, big muscles, lots of power. So trying to keep the breath even. Legs are starting to feel like they're cramping up a little bit around the outside edges of the hips. Last few breaths. Just trying to relax in. And then I can use the hands to lift back up. So that was pretty big for our last pose of the evening before we come into Shavasana. I'm going to use the bolster again underneath the back of my thighs for our last few minutes here on the mat. I'm also going to use the block behind the back of the head, but that is more because it's easier for me to then look towards the clock, keep an eye on it. So you don't need that. If it doesn't feel good to put it underneath your head, then allow your head to be on the mat. You could also use a blanket or a cushion underneath the back of the head. I'm going to take the bolster this evening directly, I would say, underneath the back of the knees, so not underneath thighs, which sometimes I use. And I'm going to have the feet more or less as wide as the mat, let the toes hang out a little bit. And I'm just going to let the hands come to the side of the body, about ruler's distance, palms facing upish. Have a fine little wriggle out. Let my lower back sink into the floor as I close my eyes, and of licking the lips a little bit, or taking 3 long sighs out through an open mouth, whichever you find more useful, intuitive to work towards. And then we'll simply sink and yield. Very slowly, gently allowing yourself to wriggle your fingers and your toes as you breathe a little louder, a little deeper. Just starting to turn the wrists and the ankles. Breathe again, nice long breath in and stretch in any way that feels intuitive. And then from here, I'm going to slide the heels along the ground and over the bolsters, one leg at a time towards me. And allow the knees to come in towards the body. I'm just going to use one heel to push the bolster away a little bit. And then both knees are in towards the body, hands around the shin, very light, soft hug. I enjoy rolling around on the spine a little bit from side to side. If that is your cup of tea, then allow yourself to do the same. And then eventually I'm going to take one of those rocks from side to side to lean all the way over to the right side of the mat. I'm going to let the legs come down to the ground close to me. And then turn my chest in towards the floor. I'm just going to use the hands underneath the head. Take a few breaths here. And sink into this side of my body. And on the exhale, start to bring those hands underneath the body. Press away from the floor again. And we're ready to come into a nice seated posture. And hopefully your hips feel a little bit different to when we started in the class. Your spine as well, and a little less stressed maybe if you were feeling that before we started. Bring the hands in towards the heart. Close the eyes and take a longer breath in. On the exhale, we're going to allow the chin to drop gently in towards the chest, and finding the belly drawn to the spine, simply bow to the floor, feeling your practice. As breath comes back into the body, I'll use that to lift the spine back up. Let the head follow, the eyes open. Namaste. I hope you enjoyed this evening. See you again soon on the mat, and have a lovely rest of the week.